Hello there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today I have been inspired by the beautiful November 2019 Inspiration Challenge over on our card blog. So you can see with the colours that I have used, I am going to be using some of the watercolour markers to create these colours. So to start with, I am going to be using the Painted Flowers stamp set. This is one of my favourites, my first ever, and I still go to this time and time again. It is one of those stamp sets that's never going to go out of fashion, and it is always close to my heart. So I'm just going to be using the outlines on this. So I am using a piece of watercolour cardstock, and I'm going to be stamping some of the flowers and the little leaves and the little bud image using the Obsidian black ink. I'm using the Obsidian because it gives such a crisp finish, and it's also watercolour resistant, so it's a good one to use for your watercolouring. So once I'm happy with the amount of little images that I have, I'm then going to start with my mixing of the colours. So I am going to be using, to start with, I am going to be using the Sun Kissed. This is from the Tropical Artist markers, and I'm just going to pop that onto my acrylic block, and I'm using this as kind of a little palette. I'm then going to use some of the rouge, and with a little bit of water I'm just going to mix these together. Now I'm after the lovely peachy shade that is on the little inspiration, and I'm just trying variant shades of this little mix that I have here with some water to dilute it down a bit. But I was finding that I did want it a tad more yellow, so I'm adding a little bit of the Citrus Burst as well. And once I've added the Citrus Burst, I added a little bit more, and I did find that I was happy with the little peachy colour that I was after, and that is the one that I'm going to go with. So again, when I'm happy with the colour that I've got, I'm then going to add these into these stamped florals from before, the painted stamped florals. So as you can see, I'm just adding this in very, very messily. And I do find that a little bit of messy watercolour looks very, very pretty and also very stylized as well. So as you can see, I'm kind of just moving the colour around. I'm not worrying too much about it going over any of the edges, and I'm leaving some white spaces within those flowers as well. I'm just going to add little drops into the buds because that's all the colour it's going to need. And as you can see, I'm using my phone to see the colours from the inspiration there. I have my peach, and now I'm going to move on to the pinky raspberry tone. I'm using the Rubelite marker, and this is not quite the colour that I wanted. So I'm going to add a little bit of that rouge, and I'm just going to mix those together. Again, I am going to use some of the clean clear water that I have to the side of me to dilute this down. Once I'm happy with the colour, I am going to go for it again. So as before, I'm just going to add these to the flowers, again pretty messily. The colours haven't dried from last time, so these are going to mix a little bit into each other, which is going to give me a great effect. But I'm trying to add these to maybe where the dark lines are, maybe where there would be more shadow to the centre of the flower, and maybe some of under those little petals that we have going over there. It is kind of an impressionistic look, so don't worry too much about painting these perfectly. I do find just adding a little splash of colour works really, really well. So again, for the little buds, I'm just going to add a tiny, tiny dot of this raspberry colour just to the base of those, and that's going to be those done. I'm then going to move on to the green colour that we have in the inspiration. I'm using moss, and I found this was just perfect, just the way that it was. So I'm just going to go with the moss for the leaves. Again, I'm going to have a little bit of messy impressionistic watercolour going on here. So I'm using kind of a watered down bit of that moss colour all over the leaf, leaving a little bit of white space to give me a great highlight. And then taking the undiluted ink just to the base of that petal to give me a great variant watercoloured look. Once I've finished all of the watercolouring, I'm then going to leave this piece to dry. Once it's nice and dry, I'm then just going to snip away half of this just so I can pop it through on my mini blossom machine. Once I've done that, I'm going to pop it onto my base plate. The base plate is the thicker one, and I'm then just going to use the coordinating dies around the little stamped images, and I'm going to keep them in place with a little bit of washi tape. I do find that this helps a lot to stop them moving around when you do run them through the machine. Just going to add the top plate on and then run it through my mini blossom, and then I'm going to have some really great little watercolored floral elements to use on my card. So once I have cut everything out, it's then time for me to have a little play. Now on the inspiration, all of the flowers were coming from the bottom of the card, and I really liked that, so I was just going to go with that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with these, making sure that I have them where I want them to be. I'm going to add a little bit of buds here and there, but it's great to have the die cut so you can really play around with the composition before you actually adhere them down. Once I am happy, I'm then going to start adhering them down, and I'm using some foam tape behind the flowers, and as you can see I'm working from behind, so at the top, everything that's behind, and then I'm kind of working my way forward and down the card that way. There's one here that I did want to use it in half, just so I could have another bit of that rose, because I did have an even amount and I wanted an odd, so that's why I've cut one of those in half that way, just so I could use an extra one. So once I've popped in all of the little roses or the flowers, I'm then going to add the buds and the leaves with some glue tape. I wanted to add a little bit of shine, so I'm going to be using the metallic watercolors, and I'm using the sterling silver, and I'm just adding water and I'm just going to flick that on. I used two different brushes, one for a finer mist, which is the small one, and then for larger splatters I've used the larger brush. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using the label Love, and one of my stamps was pretty mucky, but I wanted to make sure that this stamped really well. So what I've done is I've taken the stamp cleaner from Altenew, and I'm just going to give this a really good clean before I ink it up. This way it's going to mean all of that little ink residue that's within the words in this stamp has been cleaned away before I stamp it. I'm then going to use my Obsidian black ink, and I'm just going to stamp that into place onto some white cardstock. Once that's been stamped, I did heat set this a little minute before I did cut around it with some scissors. You can cut around this however you like, but I do like that white edge. You could cut right up to the black if you wanted to. Once I've done that, I've added a little bit of foam tape behind there, and then I'm going to add that into place. And there is the card finished. I really do hope that you've enjoyed watching the video and that you like the card and also the techniques included. If you do create a card that is inspired by this, it would be great if you do share, because we would love to see it. Again, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you do want to watch any more videos, there's a couple more here that you can watch at your own leisure. Also, if you don't want to miss out on any videos that we do upload to the channel, it would be great if you do subscribe. Thank you again for watching, everyone, and I'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.